Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, we got some of the latest Raiders trade rumors from some of the top NFL insiders out there like Diana Rossini, Jeremy Fowler, Adam Schefter, Trey Wingo, and yes, Ricky Scoops, all on top of that today. And you probably have seen the number one thing being talked about around Raider Nation. Apparently, the Dallas Cowboys have called the Raiders and are interested in trading for Maxx Crosby. The question is, will Mark Davis actually do it? Here's my question, though, and this is the only thing, quite frankly, I want y'all to answer on today's show. And if I end up asking you something else, you can ignore me. This is what I want you to answer. If the Raiders traded Maxx Crosby, what would you do? I just want to know what you would do. Open-ended question. Let me know down below. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Trey Wingo, and I'm not trying to say Trey Wingo is an NFL insider. What I am trying to say, though, is Trey Wingo does know a lot of people in the NFL industry and does have a lot of sources. And he reported earlier today that according to sources, the Dallas Cowboys have made inquiries with the Raiders about a potential trade for Maxx Crosby. I am somebody y'all are probably going to laugh at me. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Literally, if you didn't see this, also Trey Wingo, ESPN guy, who's one of his big connections, Adam Schefter. Adam Schefter today said, as the NFL trade deadline approaches, 2 weeks from today, the Dallas Cowboys will be a team to watch. If you didn't see the timestamps down there below, they're very, very close. So if I had to guess, Trey heard something from Schefter, Schefter relayed something to Wingo, and I'm relaying it to here on the Raiders Report. But I'll also say this, if there's one guy that you have to be able to give credit to where credit is due, shout out to Ricky Scoops. He literally just came on Twitter, like literally a few minutes ago, and he said, sorry, Cowboys fans, I have been told that the Raiders won't be trading Maxx Crosby before the deadline. And for anybody that's watched this show live, for anybody that's listened to me talk about Crosby, since as long as I've been doing this show, I am not sitting up here saying that Crosby has told me anything in the last 24 hours. What I am saying, though, is I would be absolutely positively shocked if the Raiders traded away Maxx Crosby. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I don't think it's possible this season. Down the road, it's absolutely possible based on his contract. But let's continue to talk, though, about Max. And there are things that are needed to be known if you hear people talk about Maxx Crosby trade rumors. The first thing is the contract details, right? Not only are we potentially trading away one of the best players in the NFL, but you also have to look at that contract. And when the Raiders restructured his contract this offseason, they signed him to that 3-year, $106.5 million extension. But if y'all remember, Crosby front-loaded that bad boy, and that contract was front-loaded to $38 million in year one, $32 million in year two, and then so on and so forth. It ended up going down. The reason why the contract was structured like that was in the event that the Raiders are not a winning football team come 2026, it was mainly made for 2027 based on my sources. If the Raiders are still not winning come year 2027, a Maxx Crosby trade is absolutely positively a potential. And the other reason why I'll say that, look at the guarantees. There's nothing guaranteed. Maxx Crosby did his deal with the Raiders and with Mark Davis saying, I want a lot of money up front, which is exactly what they did. And if we're still not winning by the time I'm 30 years old, I would like an opportunity to go play somewhere else. And that's what that zero guarantee does. It allows you to be able to do it. But here, though, if you're as a team that goes out and they trade for Crosby, my guy Tom Downey, he's the one that ended up making this graphic. So that's why you're going to see a lot of the Cowboy stars on there. And on the left is the overall Crosby contract and essentially how you can look at it and how it can be broken down from guarantees, injury insurance on the right-hand side of your screen. Essentially, if the Raiders were to trade Max right now to the Dallas Cowboys, based on some of the numbers, see how Cowboys owe 2025? That number is technically, when you do the math, it's technically somewhere around like $20 million would be this season for Dallas. But the reason why the Crosby deal is so interesting is because you and I know how talented he is. The fact that an NFL team could get a player like Maxx Crosby for less than $32 million per year over 2026 to 2029. When you think about Dallas and they're like, I could have paid Micah Parsons $48 million a year, or I could get Maxx Crosby for $32 million per year. The Maxx Crosby contract is one of the best contracts in the NFL, which makes it a lot easier for Max to get traded if he wants to get traded. The only way Max is getting dealt right now is if it is a Pete Carroll and John Spytek decision. That I can promise you. Let's go to the next thing here. Let's talk about trade cost, right? Because I'll get people ask me all the time, what would you want in a Maxx Crosby trade? I would want a lot. I'll tell you that right now. So what you are going to see is our guy, Tom Downey, here at Chat Sports. I asked him, what would you want in a trade for Maxx Crosby? He sent me 3 offers. I'm going to show you the 3 offers from Tom Downey, and then I'm going to show you the offer that I said I think this is what it would cost to get it done. So the Raiders receive a first-round pick, which I'm a little bit disappointed because I wanted 2 first-round picks for Tom, though he did say we could get 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick. The Cowboys end up getting Crosby. Friendly reminder that Dallas, they have 2 first-round picks this season from that trade to Micah Parsons, and that's kind of what I told Tom. I was like, if you're not offering me both those first-rounders, I'm not in love with that deal. Here's the second offer that he sent me, and when he sent me this one, I laughed in his face. I mean, like the video, if you've ever heard me say, hey, they're going to pick up the phone, they're going to laugh in your face. I got no interest in Jalen Tolbert. I got no interest in Sam Williams. I know that the Raiders are apparently looking for a defensive lineman, but let's get one thing straight here. If the Las Vegas Raiders decide to trade away Maxx Crosby, I don't think it's happening. There's less than a 1% chance that it happens. If you do, it is the definition of a full rebuild, and you better get draft picks. I don't want players. I want draft picks in a Maxx Crosby trade. Here is the third idea that Tom threw out, and some of you might laugh at this. Some of you might not. And is there anybody here in the live chat that thinks that this trade looks familiar? If you're sitting at home and you're going like, I feel like I've seen this trade before. This trade is actually the exact same compensation that the Khalil Mack trade went for. So if you're like, oh man, Crosby, Khalil Mack, this is what this deal is here. Tom said this is a bonus one to just really ruffle up some feathers overall. Shout out to Nico Victoria B. Angel in the live chat for getting it right. This was my offer to Tom for Maxx Crosby. And I want to be very, very, very clear on this. I do not want to trade away Maxx. When I sent Tom my trade, it was all around the rumors that Maxx could potentially end up getting dealt. If you were to ask me right now, what do I think it would cost to go get him if the Raiders were actually shopping him with the Dallas Cowboys, I would say it would take both of their first-round picks. Both of their first-round picks, throw in a 4th-round pick because I do think the Raiders then could use that 4th, get another 4th. Maybe they try to trade back up and around 2nd and 3, be a little bit more aggressive. I'm not exactly sure what the entire plan is, but this is what I said I would want as my absolute bare minimum for Maxx Crosby in a trade with the Dallas Cowboys. But I do want to say this over and over and over again because I think like when we talk about 98, when we talk about Maxx, there's, even for here on the Raiders Report, and I think amongst all of Raider Nation, it's kind of like bucketed. It's like Maxx is kind of the one player that nobody can talk bad about. He's the one player that nobody can say anything about. I want to be very, very honest with you. Losing Maxx Crosby would be heartbreaking. Losing Maxx Crosby would be devastating to me. Maxx is the very, very first Raiders player that I ever connected with back to the 2019 Hard Knocks days. That's my guy. He knows it, that I'll always ride and die with him. I met his family. I've met so many people a part of Max's life. But at the exact same time, nobody is above the shield. And if the Raiders are truly going to rebuild, and I mean this, like a true rebuild, the one player that you have to sit back and go, does it make sense? Because the guy that you're going to get the most for is number 98. I would be devastated, but I also don't want Raider fans to get mad at the idea because we're just having a conversation. And if we can't have a conversation, quite frankly, I don't want you here anyway. Let's go to the next reason here of what to look for in terms of a Maxx Crosby trade. I'm going to illustrate to you why I think it could happen. Again, I'm not saying that I think it is going to happen. I'm playing devil's advocate here of, well, here's why if a trade actually ended up going down, here's why I think it could happen. Because right now the Raiders are 2-5. And let's face it, they look lost, right? We know they look lost. You know they look lost. Guess who also knows they look lost? 98. And listen to him talk over the past few days. He just sounds defeated, and I sound defeated. You probably sound defeated talking about the Raiders. Quite frankly, if you're not upset about the state of the Raiders, you're not a real one, and quite frankly, you probably shouldn't even be on the team to begin with. But I also know because Max front-loaded this contract, that made it easier for him to be dealt. I think also the other part of the equation here in terms of why he could be traded to Dallas, he went to high school in the DFW area. He also has got family down here in the Dallas area. I have met Mama Crosby. I have met Dad Crosby. I'm going to say Daddy Crosby. Just sounds weird. I've met his brother. I've never met the sister. I've met the Crosby family. They've been nothing but kind to me. They've also been nothing but kind to Raider Nation. Anywhere that I've seen them, they have always shown love to Raider Nation. But at the end of the day, he does have a family, and he's got a young girl. She just turned 3 years old. When we think about other reasons outside of football, having family in this area, you have to be able to sit back and go, all right, that could be maybe that 1% of why he would want to go to Dallas. But based on reports, based on everything I'm hearing, Maxx Crosby's not going to get traded to the Dallas Cowboys. I promise you that. Coming up next here on the show, let's talk about why a Max trade wouldn't happen. And again, it's already been reported by Ricky that it's not going to happen. There's still going to be rumors out there. I'm going to continuously talk about anything that ends up coming across my plate because that's what the Raiders Report is about. I'm not an insider. I don't want to be an insider. I'm a normal Raider fan that when I hear something interesting, I want to share it with you, right? Just like when you guys are excited about something, you send it to me in my DMs. Why? Because it takes two to tango. We've built an awesome relationship, and I really think that this relationship is a great, great thing. Heck, I would say that it doesn't stink. And if you think that it stinks, maybe you should check out our sponsor here, Mando, because we got the best deodorant out there. Because when I do a show like this, I'm not going to lie to you, I sweat. As soon as I get home, I walk home, I give my wife a hug, and she can instantly tell when I have Mando on and when I don't have Mando on. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers are going to get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code CHAT at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. Mando's formulated to stop odor before it starts and doesn't mask odor with overwhelming fragrance, so you can tackle anything from the job site to tailgating with confidence. Don't mask it, Mando it. I'm a man that likes a good deal. Y'all know that. And guess what? Mando Double Protection tackles both odor and sweat. Mando's new deodorant plus sweat control stick gives you double the protection you need. No more worrying about sweat stains or those embarrassing pit rings, just all-day freshness and dryness. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code CHAT, that's CHAT, at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support the Raiders Report. Tell them that we sent you. Mando's got you covered. Protect your pits. Smell great doing it. And I'm telling you this right now, with all the trade rumors around Maxx Crosby, I'm glad I have my Mando tube. I also am really glad that I got my ball wipes. And if anybody wants to know how they smell, I'll tell you after the show. Let's go to the next thing here of why, or in terms of we're talking about the Maxx Crosby trade. The next thing to know is, I think, why it wouldn't happen. And I know that Maxx Crosby wants to win. We all know he's a competitor. He wants to win, no doubt about it. But Maxx Crosby's situation is a lot different than every other player on the Raiders. And I would say there's only maybe 10 players in the NFL that are in the situation that Maxx Crosby is in. And what do I mean by that? I was told a Maxx Crosby trade wouldn't happen until 2026 or 2027 at the earliest. That's based on his contract. But the 10 players that I'm talking about is Max's relationship with Mark Davis cannot be understated enough. I think Maxx Crosby's relationship with Mark Davis is the best player-owner relationship in the NFL that doesn't involve that player being a quarterback. I'm not sitting up here saying that Max has told me anything. I'm not sitting up here saying that Mark Davis has told me anything. But you can remember me saying this, and I've been saying it for years because I was told by a good source. Maxx Crosby will have stake. Maxx Crosby will be a part-time owner of the Las Vegas Raiders if he plays his entire career in Vegas. And I think that we always sit up here and we talk about championships. We talk about rings, and I get it. Winning championships, getting a ring, it is, man. It's really, really difficult. And sometimes players, they look at the after-career aspect. I think Alvin Kamara is a perfect example of that right now, where he was like, If you tried to trade me away from the Saints, I would just tell you I'm not going to do that. I'm going to act like I'm hurt. And I'm not saying Max is going to do that same thing, but let's be honest with ourselves here. If Maxx Crosby stays in Las Vegas for his entire career, he will make way, way more money after his football career than he ever did as a football player. Think about that for a second. Max knows that. And everybody around Max knows that. And Max's biggest thing is trying to do right by his friends, trying to do right by his family members. And I know that he does truly want to be a Raider for life. I messaged him this morning. Max wants to be a Raider for life. And that's why I don't think that a trade ends up happening. But we do have some more rumors to get into here because, again, it's not only Maxx Crosby that people are talking about today. There was also rumors around Jeremy Fowler. There's also rumors around Dianna Russini. And here's what Jeremy Fowler had to say on the Raiders' trade plans. Teams I've spoken to believe the Raiders are open to trading wide receiver Jakobi Meyers, but are not actively trying to move him. The sense is the Raiders would prefer to play out the season before making major determinations about the roster. But Jakobi requested a trade in the preseason, so a potential deal feels at least on the table. Now, why would the Raiders trade away Jakobi? Because they don't want to pay him, and that he did already request that trade. The Raiders drafted 2 receivers this year, and Jack Besh and Dante Thornton Jr. Jakobi didn't play Week 7 against the Kansas City Chiefs, but very interesting, he is practicing today, right now at the time that I'm making this video. But Jakobi, to me, is the #1 Raiders wide receiver. And when you talk about moving on from Jakobi, you got to look at it on both sides. You got to look at it as why the Raiders would trade him away, and then you also have to look at it as why they wouldn't trade him away. Jakobi is the Raiders' #1 wide receiver, right? And losing him only hurts Geno Smith, and it only hurts Chip Kelly, and it hurts this offense. 2 people that Pete Carroll has invested, quite frankly, his job on the line for. I know Mark Davis today at the owners' meetings or whatever the hell they're at said that he's not going to fire Pete Carroll, and if you thought that Mark Davis was going to fire Pete Carroll this year, you definitely do not watch this show. But at the exact same time, the reason why you don't move on from Jakobi is you're projected to get a 4th-round comp pick for him in next offseason, even if he hits the open market. So I know there's a lot of rumors around it. Jakobi, though, is the one that wants to get traded now. And that's very, very clear based on the people that I talked to. Jakobi does not want to be here anymore. He does want to go somewhere else. And if it was up to him, he would not play another game with the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's go to another report here, though, from Dianna Russini. And the Raiders are open to moving receiver Jakobi Meyers while making calls on defensive linemen and corners. So since Dianna and Jeremy Fowler, and quite frankly, anybody under the sun or anybody that has any sense of the NFL trade market, everybody knows people are talking about Jakobi Meyers. But I did find it interesting that Russini said, according to her sources, the Raiders are reaching out and they are talking and looking for cornerback and defensive lineman. So what I want to know from all of y'all, if we were to make a deal for either a corner or a defensive lineman, and I actually love this question, and I love this question because I think corner is a bigger need. But I think defensive line is where games are won in the trenches. So let me know down below, cornerback, defensive line, what are you thinking? If I had to pick between those 2 positions, I would sit up here and I'd go cornerback. But I'll also say this. I think it's kind of dumb for the Raiders to trade for players right now. We're a 2-5 football team. And you know also why I think it's kind of a dumb idea to trade for a corner? And you know why I think it's kind of dumb to trade for a defensive lineman? Well, first off, you got Darian Porter. I'd love to see him play. And then you got Tonka Hemingway and J.J. Pegues. Instead of going out and trading for a corner and a defensive lineman, why don't you just play the 3 flipping guys that you drafted this past year, John Spytek? If you are looking, though, for cornerbacks, I personally think that there's 2 corners that the Raiders could look at. Obviously, there could end up being more, but to me, there's 2 corners on my radar. Seahawks cornerback Reek Woolen, due to his connections with Pete Carroll, he's been on the market for a long time. There's a lot of conversations around him right now. But another corner that is starting to pick up some steam, Alontae Taylor, and he is somebody that's got a lot of Raiders connections. Reminder, Marcus Robinson, the Raiders, Marcus Robinson, the Raiders cornerback coach. He was in New Orleans last year. Joe Woods, also in New Orleans. They loved Alontae Taylor. And earlier this offseason, this was somebody that we did a lot of conversations about, and the Saints are not playing a very good football. I think that that's somebody the Raiders could look at. In terms of defensive linemen, there are so many different options that the Raiders could go with. And let's be honest, the way that this team is operated, if the Raiders go out and they get a corner or defensive lineman, it's probably going to be some cheap guy, right? It's probably going to be some cheap dude, right? I don't know if it's going to be Kayvon Thibodeaux. Here's what I do know. The New York Giants and the Raiders have had conversations in regards to the Jakobi Meyers. I do wonder if instead of that team, both of those teams that value draft compensation, if they were like, all right, we need a number one receiver in Jakobi, we'll give you Kayvon Thibodeaux, and we'll just move on because we already have Abdul Carter. We have a lot of other players that we've invested in on that defensive line. Another player that I'll throw out there, Jaelan Phillips. And Jaelan Phillips is a outside defensive end. He's got some connections to some of the players that we've had on our team, but I also think that he fits this mold of what the Raiders have been looking for and kind of what Pete looks for. Pete's been looking for a player to play the Bruce Irvin rule, a big defensive end, outside linebacker. They tried to use Jermaine Pratt, and it's one of the reasons why Jermaine Pratt wasn't happy because he felt like he was being used in the wrong way. But to me, Jaelan Phillips could be somebody to at least keep in mind if the Raiders want to go out and they want to try to get him. But again, to me, if it was up to me, and I'm saying this, if I was the Raiders, I would go, hang on to your draft picks, guys. I don't think we're going to win anything this season. And it sucks to say it, but I really do not think that we're going to win anything this season. There's nothing that would make me happier than Pete Carroll, John Spytek, and this entire regime to be able to prove me wrong. And I see somebody down there going, no to tanking. I hear you, Unknown Raider. I don't want to tank either. But what I at least want is my younger players to start to get some work. And if we're not going to go out and trade for anybody that's actually going to help us win football games, then play Darian Porter more. Then play J.J. Pegues more. Then play Tonka Hemingway a little bit more. Let's get those guys some extra reps. Like, that to me at least makes some sense. And that to me is something that I would at least like to see the Raiders do a little bit more. Hell, play Tyree Wilson at defensive tackle a little bit more. Some other news that did happen, and if you follow me on social media, if you're subscribed to the Raiders Report, you already see that I made a video on this earlier, but I wanted to just keep you up to date in case you didn't see it. Some minor Raiders roster moves, and this is all practice squad stuff. The Raiders signed guard Landon Robinson. He's played with the New England Patriots over the past 2 years. I talked to our Patriots guy, and, quote, he was like, that guy's freaking terrible. So, well, I mean, we'll end up seeing he's a big body guard. Raiders also brought back, shout out, wide receiver DJ Turner to the practice squad, and they moved on from McClendon Curtis and safety JT Woods. That is all the Raiders news. That's all the Raiders trade rumors that I think are the most important things to know from today's program. If you're watching this live, don't go anywhere. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. If you're not watching this live, friendly reminder, we go live every single Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, live on the Raiders Report.